G'day folks, and welcome back to the channel for a quick tutorial bite on where to find Aether resistance early in the game. Now you might be asking yourself, why would I want Aether resistance? It's normal difficulty, can't I just play? And the answer is yes you can, but it will be significantly easier if you have Aether resistance. Now this resistance is important early on, because the boss of Act 1 does a lot of Aether damage, the boss of, well, halfway through Act 2 does a lot of Aether damage, and then there is the boss in the Gruesome Harvest, the Aether Cow, that also does a decent amount of Aether damage. There's also the Conflagration, there's Port Valbury. There are a lot of reasons why in the first half of the game, on the very first difficulty, you might want to get your hands on a decent amount of Aether resistance. So how are you going to do it? Well, that's going to depend on which part of the game you are up to. If you are looking for Aether resistance for the Warden, you have two monster infrequents available that will help you out. Milton's Cask here drops from Milton, who is findable in the Whitemire. We'll just go on over there and I'll point out the buildings that he lives in. So from the Whitemire Rift here, which I'll mouse over once I move out of the way, you can head up here to this collection of 3 buildings. And Milton will be in one of these 3 buildings every single time you enter the game. And he will drop you a helmet. And that helmet that comes with bonus damage to ethereals and Aether corruption, in addition to somewhere between 10 and sort of low 20% Aether resistance. This one happens to have some other stuff on it, but you will always get some amount of Aether resistance from Milton's Cask. The other monster infrequent you want to have a look at, maybe, is Veloth's Ring. This will always come with, again, some amount of Aether resistance. There is a good chance that this one will come with something like 9%. But if you get a good roll like this one, this being the level 20 version, maybe a little higher than you will be when you need it for Warden, but you can expect somewhere around 9-10% Aether resistance from this ring, and once again, Veloth will drop it every single time. If you want to access Veloth, Veloth is the Slith, who you will kill at the end of the quest for the trapdoor down here. I'm not going to run all the way there to show it, but if you head down there and keep heading deeper, eventually you will find Veloth at the end near the Devotion Shrine, and Veloth will drop that ring. Unfortunately, that's kind of where your options run out. However, you do always have the option of doing a search for Aether resistance at a shop, and you can find boots, you can find belts. This one's actually not too bad. And you can just buy them. Now, these are probably a little expensive for the end of Act 1, so you wouldn't want to buy more than maybe 1 or 2. But you'll also likely find a couple of random items while you are leveling through Act 1 that will help you out. You will also have access to, if we head on over to Angrim, some components. Because Angrim and also Duncan know the purified salt recipe by default, so you can always make this. Now these do go on your weapons, which is not ideal. They also require level 20, which again is not ideal for the Warden. However, I would consider these absolute last resorts. They do give you 20% Aether resistance, and so 1 on each of your weapons can just basically fix your Aether resistance problems. However, the components on your weapons are often a large part of your damage, and so doing that is kind of last resort. What about, though, if you wanted to fight Kronley and you need Aether resistance? Well, now we get a couple of extra options. Technically just 1, but potentially 2, because the Spiritbane ointment comes from a blueprint that can drop fairly early. The question is, do you have the blueprint? You will be able to make this if you have got it, because it basically just needs Aether crystals. You'll have to craft them into a shard and a wrathstone, but those are both made up entirely of Aether crystals anyway, so some Aether crystals and a few iron bits, and you've got yourself some Spiritbane ointments. You craft these 3 at a time, they last for quite a while, and they'll provide you with 25% Aether resistance. Once you have made it to Homestead, and if you have sided with Isaiah Redden, the caravan driver that you meet in early Act 2, then he will potentially sell you this resistance potion as well, but you do have to reset his inventory a few times in order to get it, and that's only once you've gotten to Homestead. Heading back to Kronley, if you're trying to fight him for the first time, The only new option you really have is the Ascended Cask, and these are maybe not worth the time farming. The armor increase over Milton's Cask is nice, however early on it's not a make or break increase in armor, and the Ascended Cask drops only, and I mean literally only, from the Ascended in Kronley's gang. So only in Kronley's hideout, and only the Ascended which look like they are wearing the helmet. If the monster doesn't look like it's wearing the helmet, it will not drop it. If its name is not specifically Kronley's gang Ascended, it will not drop it. So potentially you could have one of these, but they are somewhat rare just due to who can drop them. Once you get to Homestead, however, or very close to it, you will have some extra components here. Now, the runestone does come from the rovers, so before you get into the Arcovian Undead, which is one of the things that will boost your reputation with the rovers, you're probably not going to be able to buy this particular blueprint because it does come from their faction shop, and you do need to be respected. So until you've gone through the Arcovian Undercity, you are unlikely to be able to get this. However, by the time you get to Homestead, you will almost certainly be able to buy this. This component goes only in your helmet, and it provides you with 12% Aether resistance and some extra damage for the Ethereals and Aether corruptions. So this can be good when you are fighting the Aether Cow, if you don't need your helmet for example, poison and acid resistance like this character is doing. You will also have access to Aether Souls. This one comes from Devil's Crossing, and generally speaking, killing Darius Kronley is what gets you access to this, because that's where I find I generally have the reputation in order to buy it. This one comes from talking to Ellis here, who is the quartermaster at Devil's Crossing. Again, it requires respected, and you can buy the blueprint here. And once again, crafting this is almost entirely Aether crystals. Wrathstones are made from Aether crystals, and ectoplasms come from the ghosts. You should be able to craft these. They go in an amulet or a medal, so you can have two of them. And if you do have two, you will end up with 32% less or more Aether resistance, as well as 6% each less damage from Ethereals and Aether corruptions. So these can be quite good for Homestead. And that is your options. Now, I do have to mention as well that the Ascended shoulder plates unfortunately come with Chaos resistance built in and not Aether resistance. So if you need Chaos resistance, these are a good option. However, they will never give you Aether resistance unless they happen to roll a prefix or a suffix that gives you that. Similarly, the Incendiary shoulder plates, the fire version that also drops from Kronley's gang, is Chaos resistance. And the Incendiary Cask, which is the helmet that drops from the same monsters again, does give you Chaos resistance and not Aether. You can also sometimes find some epic items. These boots are quite good for Aether resistance, but you are not guaranteed these. So that's it. That's the end. That's how you find yourself some Aether resistance for various points in the game. Good luck with your game. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and goodbye for now.